your world? Was it a slow trickle through unknown means, or sort of an in mass appearance on a rune gate, or what? Also, it seems that if a new and previously unknown species suddenly appeared, and especially if they seem to be hostile towards humanity as the Iroquois do, it seems to me that there would be some sort of uprising against the Iroquois nation as a whole. Perhaps humans would see these flying warriors as a threat and want to deal with it. Not to mention human nature is to fear the unknown and a tendency to strike out at what they fear. Have any of these agitations been applied to the lore or the storyline? If not, how do you explain their absence?
Okay, I've written the Iroquois lore, and I can't wait for you guys to read it. Of them, in a few ways, it's one of the weirdest and chantiest, and it's very different, but I really dig it. In answer to you, okay, this is a long one. Here we go. When they first showed up, the first group that came over was pretty big. I imagine a few thousand strong. And no one was really looking. No, in terms of whether they showed up a few at a time or all in one big lump at some rune gate, no one was really there. All that people really knew was all of a sudden, hey, there are these new guys. And it's not just humanity that fears them, it's just about everybody. Because they were equal opportunity conquerors. They are of the belief that they are the only sentient beings in the universe. And these other people around them who they're bumping into, they're kind of neat and they're advanced and they can speak and write and stuff, but that doesn't make them sentient and very cool. They're the only beings that are native to their world. And so a world of all of this other stuff, they figure, oh, these are just weird animals. Anyway, the way that I'm envisioning it in the lore, as it stands right now, most of the races, if not all of them, are going to universally view them with suspicion because they did try to just take everybody down. And it was an initial foray. And as the lore is going to make very plain, that first group that came in and eventually fathered these new Iroquois, these Iroquois that don't have necessary loyalty to the species, which is left so that players can have them join other guilds and whatnot. These new Iroquois are the exception, and another big foreshadowing is that get your hand out of frame. By the end of the Iroquois lore, you're going to get the feeling that the Iroquois don't really care if everyone is suspicious of them, and that they've got backup coming. So there you go. You can expect to see that someday too.
Sorry about the hand, everyone.
All
okay,
right.
Next question is from Shadowbane Lore, and
when we get through all of these, let me know, because there's one that I want to do from before Gen Con that I want to answer really quick.
Shad asks, will the lore really be adapted to the actions of the players, even if it isn't what you really wanted?
In terms of that, I meant to say this earlier. I'm coming out of a very strong pen and paper background. You know, that's where I got my start doing this. It's where I got my start reading fantasy. And so, for a long time I've known that if you sit 6 people down at a table with a very strict and rigid plan, they're probably not going to do what you want them to do. And I can imagine that 100,000 players will be no different. It's going to be a very careful selection process to find the people who we figure are going to do what we want to do. But the way to do it is to keep it open-ended. Is to have a situation where an event is basically thought of in terms of, okay, feature character X is going to do something, and this is his plan, this is what he wants, and this is the means he's using to do it. And it will have effects in terms of monster spawns or changes to the environment or whatever. And the players are either going to go, ooh, we like what he's doing and we want to help, in which case if they seek him out, sure, he'll take them. Or they're going to try to stop him. They're going to fight the monsters he's spawning and work their way to his lair and find the one big, huge item that will banish him or whatever. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to me which side wins. I mean, we're living in a world without permanent death, and that applies to the FCs too. So if a feature character goes and says, oh, hey, please, help me do this, and people gank him and take his stuff, okay. He's just going to respawn someplace, just like players do, and he'll remember the names of those guys. And so maybe the next people who actually take him up on his offer, maybe he'll have something to add to his little list of requests and help. So in terms of the way I want the lore to turn out is I want it to be a good story. And a tragedy is just as good to me as a triumph. And the fact that, is feature character X going to accomplish his plan? As long as I can sort of predict what would happen from there either way, that's cool. If he wins or if he loses, that's up to you guys. And there's not much I can imagine that I really wouldn't want to happen in the lore. Because if you look at the lore, I mean, if you think of it in terms of a game, there's a lot that's already happening. People are like, well, what if someone gets Shadowbane and they just get ganked and someone just takes it, never logs in with it? You can argue that that's exactly what happened to Berrigan. Only, only, what's her name? Ithriana didn't sell it on eBay. So, there you go.
Here's another one.
Okay.
Here's a question about the Envori.
All right.
And the question comes from Rizzoni. I think that's probably how you pronounce it.
Okay.
And he asks, are they, as a culture, more inclined to the Barbarian Clan template or the Noble House? How do they, again, as a group, feel about the other races, particularly about human cultures, elves, elfborn, and shades? But if he is feeling talkative, which he is, also towards centaurs, dwarves, and Iroquois. So basically, to cut it down to short, I mean, just
how do they feel about everybody?
About the Envori,
and what's going on with the Envori? The Envori, the Barbarian Clan template, we pretty much built for them. And I would expect that 90% of them are going to use that. Now, the Noble House, there might be some that go the Noble House route. Really enlightened clans, especially ones who've had lots of doings with the Southlanders or other people. So it's not it's not beyond the realm of possibility, but it would be really uncommon. Okay, culturally, how do they feel about all the other races? In terms of every other human culture are all Southlanders. They're weaklings who, we're not going to kill them out of hand, but boy, they're not us. Go look at the 13th Warrior and look how they treat Antonio Banderas. And if a Southlander can prove himself, if he can prove that he's strong and cunning and quick of mind, then yeah, he might be worth some respect, but he's never going to be one of us. Dwarves are cool. Dwarves taught them metalwork, and dwarves also hate the giants, so they can't be all bad. Half-giants are, of course, heroes and venerated among their race. Shades are weird. Now, if they're born of Envori families, which they are, they're seen as unfortunate things that happen. My cousin, oh, that's too bad. My cousin had a shade child. Oh, well, gee, that's too bad. They're not going to kill them out of hand. They're not going to throw them out. But these shades are going to have to pull their own weight. And if they're too weak to make it, they're too weak to make it. But if you look to Norse mythology, there are lots of, sickly, dark-headed children that show up in Viking clans who end up having sinister reputations, but their lord and thane still keeps them around, and sometimes they're even useful. Elves, they fought a big war with them a long time ago. Nowadays, they don't necessarily trust them, but they accept their existence. Elf-born, once again, if they're born of an Envorian and elf, these things happen. They are really beautiful, after all. And I can see, as long as they don't get too twitchy, they'll keep them around, too.
Okay, let's move on.